Close your eyes for a second and picture a Brazilian street market on a bright morning. The kind where you hear vendors calling out prices like they're singing, where people drift from stall to stall with little plastic bags of fruit, and somewhere in the middle of it all there's that sound you can't confuse with anything else, a pastel hitting hot oil. One sharp sizzle, then a steady crackle that promises a blistered, golden shell. The air smells like fried dough, fresh herbs, and that comforting warmth that makes you hungry even if you swore you weren't. That's where I'm taking you today, straight into the feeling of the fira, but from the calm of our own kitchen. Because there's a particular kind of joy in recreating a street snack at home and realizing it's not only possible, it can be incredible. I'm going to show you how I make pastel de fira the way I love it, ultra thin, with those little bubbles all over the surface, shatteringly crisp when you bite, and filled with a juicy seasoned beef that smells like Sunday lunch spilling into the afternoon. And I'll tell you something I learned early on, every pastel stall has its own secret. Ask 2 different firantes what makes theirs the best and you'll get 2 confident answers and one smile that says, I'm not telling you everything. Mine is simple, and it's the kind of trick that feels almost too easy once you see it. A small splash of cachaca in the dough. Not to make it taste like alcohol, not at all. It's there for texture, for that light, dry crunch that keeps the shell crisp instead of heavy. So in this video, you'll watch me mix and knead the dough until it turns smooth and elastic, then let it rest so it relaxes and rolls out paper thin without fighting back. You'll see how I seal the edges tight, because a good pastel doesn't leak, it protects the filling like a little edible envelope. If you're enjoying this kind of Brazilian kitchen story, go ahead and give the video a like so I know to bring more fira classics. And tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, traditions, places, music, anything. Now come closer, because the dough is about to come together in your hands, and the first decision we make is the one that changes everything. The first thing I want you to picture is the fira itself, plastic stools, chatter bouncing between stalls, someone calling out prices like it's a song, and that sound you can recognize with your eyes closed, the hiss when a pastel hits hot oil. It's not just food, it's a little ritual. And every time I'm there, I notice the same scene, a line of people pretending they're not hungry, watching the pastel guy work like it's a magic show. So let's bring that home, starting with the part most people rush, the dough. In a big bowl, I'm mixing flour, a pinch of salt, warm water, a little oil, and here comes my quiet street secret, a splash of cachaca. Not enough to taste like alcohol, just enough to help the dough fry up with that crackly, blistered skin. I remember once asking a vendor what made his pastel so crisp. He didn't even look up, just smiled and said, each stall has its trick. That was all I got. No recipe, no measurements, just mystery and a wink. Years later, I learned the cachaca trick from a friend's aunt who said it like it was obvious, it evaporates fast. That's the crunch. I knead until the dough turns smooth and elastic, the kind that stops sticking to your hands and starts feeling alive. Then it rests, because a good dough needs a breath. While it relaxes, I'm building the filling, ground beef in a hot pan, onions sweating down until sweet, garlic, salt, black pepper, maybe a little paprika for warmth. And I want it juicy, not wet, so I cook it until it's flavorful, then let it cool. Hot filling is a betrayal, it steams the dough from the inside and makes sealing harder. And sealing matters. I've watched pastillas burst open like little tragedies in oil, spilling their insides because someone rushed the edges. When I roll this dough, I'm going paper thin, almost translucent, and I'm already thinking ahead, press, fold, seal tight, no air pockets. If you're enjoying this so far, tell me, what's your go-to fira snack, or the filling you'd choose without thinking? And if you want more Brazilian recipes with these little cultural secrets tucked inside, stick with me and subscribe, because next, we're heading to the stove, where oil temperature decides everything. Back at home, I try to bring that fira feeling into my own kitchen. Not with anything fancy, just a clean counter, a wide bowl, and the kind of patience you learn from watching someone older cook without rushing. The dough starts simple, flour that falls like soft dust, a pinch of salt, a little oil. Then comes the part that always makes people look up when I say it out loud, a small splash of cachaca. I can still hear the vendor teasing a customer at the market, you want it crunchy or you want it sad? And then, quieter, as if sharing a secret only with the ones who are paying attention, a little pinga in the dough, that's the trick. At home, I pour it in and the smell rises, sharp, sweet, unmistakably Brazilian. It won't taste like alcohol later, but it changes the texture. It helps the dough fry up lighter, drier, blistered in the best way. I add warm water little by little until the dough comes together, then I knead. The sound is soft, push, fold, turn until it's smooth and elastic, not sticky, not stiff. I cover it and let it rest, because resting isn't optional here. It's the difference between fighting the dough and rolling it like a dream. While it rests, I start the beef filling. A pan gets hot, a thin sheen of oil, then onions hitting the surface with that instant hiss that makes the whole kitchen feel alive. Garlic follows, and then the ground beef, breaking apart, browning, picking up flavor. Salt, black pepper, a little paprika for warmth, and a touch of chopped olives if you like that fire-style punch. I keep it juicy, not wet, because nobody wants a pastel that bursts open in the oil like a bad secret. Tell me something, when you think of Brazilian street food, what do you picture first, the smell, the sound, or that first crunchy bite? If you're enjoying this kind of recipe meets culture journey, stay with me and subscribe, because now the dough is rested, the filling is ready, and we're about to roll it paper thin and seal it tight, before the oil test that decides everything. Now the kitchen starts to feel like a fire stall. The dough's rested, it's smoother, more obedient, and when I press a finger into it, it springs back like it's ready for work. I dust the counter lightly, just enough so nothing sticks, because too much flour can make the surface dry. And here's where the magic of pastel really lives, the thinness. I slice off a piece, keep the rest covered so it doesn't crust over, and I roll from the center outward, turning it, rolling again, until it's almost translucent. If you hold it up for a second, you can see the light through it. That's the promise of those little blisters later. While I'm rolling, the filling is waiting on the side, cooled down so it doesn't steam the dough. It's beef brown until it's not gray anymore, with onion and garlic softened in the same pan, a pinch of salt, black pepper, and just enough green olive and parsley to make it taste like the kind of snack you eat standing up, talking with your hands. There's always someone at the fira who claims their pastel has a secret. Mine isn't complicated. It's in that splash of cachaca in the dough earlier, the quiet trick that helps the crust dry fast and fry crisp instead of heavy. I cut the sheet into rectangles, and I can't help but hear an old vendor's voice in my head, the one who used to say, "Don't be greedy with filling, be smart." So I add a modest line of beef, leaving room around the edges. Then I fold, press out the air, and seal. And I mean seal like you mean it, because nothing is sadder than watching your filling escape into the oil. I press with my fingers first, then crimp with a fork, those classic teeth marks that say, "This one's ready." Before we fry, quick question, when you think of Brazilian food, what's the first dish you picture? If you're enjoying this little trip to the fira without leaving home, tap like, it really helps the channel find people who love these flavors. Now, the oil. This is where most pastéis go wrong. If it's not hot enough, the dough drinks oil and turns greasy. I'm aiming for 180 degrees Celsius, steady and confident. When it hits that point, we slide the first pastel in, and in seconds the surface starts to blister and sing, and that sound tells you we're right where we need to be. Now the dough has rested, and you can feel the difference the moment you touch it, smoother, calmer, like it finally agreed to cooperate. This is the part that always takes me back to the fira, to those stalls where the pastel maker works fast but never looks rushed. I remember watching hands dusted with flour, a quick roll, a quick stretch, and then that thin sheet of dough catching the light like paper. You don't need to be a magician here, you just need patience and a light touch. I flour the counter just enough so it won't stick, then I roll the dough out thin and thinner until it's almost translucent. If you can see the shadow of your fingers through it, you're getting close. And here's my little secret, the one I learned after a few batches that came out good but not fira good, that small splash of cachaca in the dough. It doesn't make it taste boozy. It just helps the dough fry up with that blistered, crackly shell that shatters when you bite. Now we build the pastel. I cut the dough into rectangles, and I bring over the beef filling, already cooled so it won't steam the dough from the inside. The smell is warm and familiar, onion, garlic, that savory beef, a little pepper. I spoon it onto one half, not too much, because the pastel should feel full but still able to close without a fight. I fold it over, press the air out gently, and then I seal the edges firmly. This is where people lose pastéis, a lazy seal, a little gap, and the filling will escape right into the oil. I press with my fingers, then crimp with a fork until it feels like a promise. And now, the moment that decides everything, the oil. If it's not hot enough, the pastel drinks it, gets heavy, and you lose that crisp joy. I want it at 180 degrees Celsius, steady. I drop in a tiny piece of dough and it immediately bubbles like it's excited to be there. That's the sign. As the first pastel slides into the oil, it puffs and blisters, turning that perfect pale gold. I can already hear the crunch in my head. And I have to ask you, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Tell me in the comments. If you're enjoying this little trip to the fire from your own kitchen, like the video, and subscribe, because in a second, we're going to pull these out, drain them, and go straight into that first bite. And that's the moment I wait for every single time. You lift the pastel out of the oil, it's lightly blistered like tiny bubbles frozen mid-pop, and it sounds like thin glass when you tap it with the tongs. I let it rest just a few seconds on the rack, because if you cut too early, all that steam softens the crust. Then I pick it up, still warm enough to fog the air right in front of my face, and I take that first bite. The crunch comes first, clean, loud, satisfying, then the filling follows, beefy and juicy, with that gentle warmth of garlic and onion, the olives peeking through like little salty surprises. It's the kind of bite that makes you pause, because suddenly you're not in your kitchen anymore. You're standing under a striped tent at the fire, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, hearing vendors call out prices, smelling fried dough in the breeze, and feeling that simple happiness of eating something honest and hot with your hands. You can see why every pastel stand swears theirs is the real one. One says it's the way they need. Another says it's the rolling. But if you remember just two things from today, make it these: that small splash of cachaca in the dough, and oil that's truly hot around 180 degrees Celsius so the pastel fries fast, seals itself, and stays crisp instead of soaking up grease. It's not about being fancy. It's about respecting the rhythm of the snack: thin dough, tight seal, hot oil, quick fry, and then, don't overthink it. Eat it while it's singing. And if you want to make this feel even more like the fira, do what Brazilians do: serve it with something cold on the side, something that makes the crunch feel even louder. I always imagine that little plastic cup sweating in your hand while you juggle napkins, laughing because the filling is hotter than you expected. If this brought you even a little taste of Brazil, give the video a like, it really helps me keep sharing these recipes and stories. And now I want to hear from you. What's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, traditions, street markets, everyday life, tell me, and I'll bring it into the next kitchen adventure. If you'd like more Brazilian classics with clear steps and those small cultural details, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next fira right here at home.